Hi friends, welcome. Today we're going to be looking over some photos and talking about some amazing uses of color in the street photography world. First, we're going to be looking at this photo. We have a rather yellow scene. We have some yellow walls and then a cyclist with a yellow jacket coming through, repeating the yellow on the walls. And then we have some bluish gray tones making up the rest of the scene, including these sort of oval lights on the side. It's a very unique scene. This scene is rather minimal in terms of color. And this is a great way to organize a photo better. Look for scenes that are minimal in terms of color. When you start introducing more colors, everything gets more scattered and harder to organize. Now, obviously, you can make a wonderful photo with a rainbow of colors, but you have to pull on other guidelines to organize the scene into a hierarchy. When the scene is incredibly minimal, it takes a lot of the heavy lifting off of those other things so that you can create a scene that is pleasing for us to look at more easily. Now, color is a hard thing though, because you can't just make a scene be a different color. You can't choose the colors in a scene. I mean, I suppose you can go into Lightroom after and choose the colors. But if you want to be a purist, you can't just choose the colors in a scene. You can choose the lighting in a scene by coming at a different time of day, but you can't choose the colors. I suppose the photographer in this case could have gone to a town hall meeting and said, I want all of the walls in this particular area to be yellow. And then I want the cyclist, all the cyclists in the county to have to wear yellow for safety reasons. And that could have happened, but most likely that's not what happened here. And the photographer was either came across a very serendipitous collection of elements, or there was some patience and planning involved. Planning plays a huge role in street photography. Serendipity plays a huge role in street photography. But when you plan, you put yourself in positions for serendipity more. But I think a good takeaway in regards to this photo is to patiently seek out and plan your compositions. Okay, on to the next one. We have a much more red scene. We have rather pleasing shapes all over the place. Lots of triangles and rectangles. And we have a cyclist somewhat in the middle of the frame, right in the middle of a rectangle, which is surrounded by what looks like a crosswalk type of convergence. And the crosswalk is black and white, and then the rest is this very rich red scene. And it's a good thing that the cyclist is roughly centered in this case, in the square, not so much in the scene, but in the square, because that will allow, well, if the cyclist was off to the left, for example, they could be kind of clashing with one of the crosswalks coming in. I think the photo would feel a lot different in that case. And also the convergence of everything coming into the cyclist is very pleasing for our eyes. Another thing is that the cyclist is aimed towards us as opposed to us seeing the back of the cyclist. Now, it could work in different ways. Like, for example, if the cyclist was turned parallel to us where we see the side, that could theoretically work. But if the cyclist was backwards, then I think the photo could potentially lose a lot of its strength. So it's very nice positioning for that. Beautiful texture on the ground. And, and then we have these black and white rectangles, which work very well with the red in the scene. And then we see that the black and white in those rectangles are repeated in the cyclist's clothing and hair. And then we have this little splash of green to kind of shake things up a little bit. And green is complementary to red in a very pleasing way. And one way that you can see which colors are complementary to other colors, by the way, is you can go to Adobe color.adobe.com. It's a free tool. It's fantastic. And while you can't necessarily make the scene into the colors that you see on that graphical display of helpful colorness, unless you go to a town meeting, it will help you understand what works together well. So another thing is that the photographer got up high here. You can see that they have elevated themselves and they've pointed down, probably with a longer focal length. And when you do that, both getting up high and using a longer focal length. It helps you isolate the subject and remove clutter. Next photo. Here we have a rather bizarre looking scene. We have a bit of a beauty in the bizarre thing happening here, where our mind is a little bit confused. It's like a bit of a puzzle. We're thinking, what is this person doing? Why is the stop sign on the bottom of the pole instead of the top of the pole? Do I still have to stop it if it's at the bottom of the pole? Your brain wants to figure it out. It's like a pleasing mystery. And we potentially have a fair bit of context being cut out on the side here, because there could be a trash can right to the, right off the right side of the frame, or a car right off the left side of the frame. And so your focal length, where you're standing, your compositional abilities will help you remove clutter and create scenes like this that feel kind of otherworldly. But we have a person holding up a piece of plywood that is yellow, and then behind the person is a wall of similarly yellow pieces of plywood, which makes you think, okay, maybe the person's coming from, they took a piece of the wall and they're walking off with it. I also think it's interesting that there's some yellow underneath the person's feet as well. A lot of color repetition here, and color repetition is a very powerful tool. The red, the blue, the yellow, they all work together very well. And one thing to take note of is that the monotones here, the grays and the blacks, they don't clash with these colors. They don't scream for attention in a way that breaks the photo up in an unpleasing kind of way. So these colors are your friends when you're trying to incorporate colors into your frame, right? If you just have the next photo will be a good example of this, where if you just have a bunch of black in the scene and then a couple of colors, that will allow you to easily organize the frame. But if you want to achieve a photo like this, most likely you need to go somewhere colorful. You need to be intentional about finding this place. If your own city is not particularly colorful, then it's going to be hard to create color where it's not. On to the next photo. Okay, in this one we have a very subframed scene. Most of the scene is black, but then we have the splash of blue and then the splash of red. Very pleasing. Looks like one of those rocket ship popsicles a little bit. And we have what looks like he's holding a cigarette, and then the colors are exploding out in a cone from that spot. And I think it's important to take note of the fact that this in black and white would be an incredibly different photo. The color here really takes the photo to a different place, a special place. Even if the colors were the same, it would be a different photo. Could still work, but it would be different. And what I'm trying to get you guys to do all the time is think about, okay, what makes a photo be different from another photo? But in this case, the photographer has utilized harsh light to isolate certain areas, certain colors. And this is a great way to make a scene only be, red, for example, because if you go out where the light is very harsh, or where you have this really lovely side light, I'm imagining that this was taken inside, right? And then so the inside's quite dark, and then the outside, there's a window coming through, and it's shining this very stark streak of light. So if you keep your eyes out for those things, you might not be able to capture it in that moment, but you can see, okay, I think when the sun goes that way, it might change. Let me check in on that, right? And you come back, and then sometimes the light will shine on very specific colors, and then you can just have a splash of red in your scene. But the scene would be incredibly different if the light was not doing exactly what it was doing here. So silhouettes are very helpful. Silhouettes. Silhouettes can be useful as well. I read one of my notes and got confused. I'm sorry. Silhouettes can be useful in a situation like this because you can then plop a silhouette on top of that red. It's another feature of very harsh light. Okay, on to the next photo. We have a rather pinkish scene. Would that be salmon? Probably not. It's like a pastel pink. I love the colors in this scene. They're fantastic. They make my brain happy. And we also have some rather pleasing geometry here. We have some rectangles, and then we have some tilted rectangles to break things up. And then we have a darker, underneath this escalator where this fellow's going up, we have the rectangles are darker. It's in shadow. And so that introduces a sense of depth into the scene, breaks things up nicely. It's a good idea to think about how you can break up the scene in terms of light and color. So one of the things I really do enjoy about this photo as well is that the escalator comes out of the bottom right corner and then goes up and hits just below the left. I don't know why that works. I just think it's nice. It looks quite nice. We have a nice positioning of the human. We have an implied sense of direction. The human is facing a certain direction, and then his leg is up as if he's heading in that direction. We have a sense of flow in this image. There's a strong sense of flow. And once again, a rather minimal color palette that we're working with. The colors, even the colors that are different from the pink color, work well. Nice, cool tones, right? So when it comes to finding a scene like this, honestly, my best advice is do your research to find these locations, because these locations aren't everywhere. Take some time, go on the internet, figure out where these types of locations occur, and then of course get out and explore. It's tons of exploration. And then you can look at places and go, take notes, bookmark them for later, right? You see a spot and you're like, okay, that's good, but that would be really good with better light, or different light, I should say, or with the right person coming in, somebody wearing pink, right? So, yeah. Also, know what focal length will work best in this type of situation. On to the next one. Okay, with this one, we have what I like to call a vibe scene. We have a street scene. It's kind of a photo of everything. There's not a specific, clear subject. The subject is kind of everything. Now, these photos are very hard to accomplish. They may not seem hard. It may just look like you're pointing your camera in a direction and taking a photo, but they're very hard to accomplish correctly, and I see a lot of people do it incorrectly. You must establish a hierarchy in the scene, and there are plenty of ways to go about doing that, but so what we see here is that the image is very busy, and yet it feels beautifully structured and pleasant to look at. And so a couple of tricks for organizing the hierarchy in a shot like this is to utilize a sense of depth, and that's what we have here. We're focusing past a subject that is very prominent in the scene, this lamppost with the light on it, source of light, brighter, very prominent. You can focus past that, and it emphasizes that the focal point is not actually the lamp or a specific element of the street. It is the street. It actually doubles down on this idea that this is a photo of everything. And the time of day that you come is also very helpful for structuring a scene like this, because the light is going to be doing different things. And in this case, we see that we have these splashes of warm light that can repeat off of each other to help organize the frame. We have this lamppost, obviously, right next to us. We have another lamppost a little further away. And then we have the sun shining in various warm tones that contrast against the cool tones. So the scene feels very structured. It feels very pleasing to look at. If this was midday, think about how different the scene would be. So, but play around with different times of day and see what you can pull off. Okay, on to the next photo, actually the last photo. Here we have a scene that was in Taiwan, and the reason why I know that is because Instagram will tell you the location sometimes. It's very useful. So if you want to create this scene, again, at a different time of day, like I was saying, you can go at noon. This at noon? Probably stellar. The light is probably brighter than ever at noontime. There's probably, it's blinding, I'm sure. So we have another vibe scene. We don't have a clear subject here. Where is the subject? Is it the cross up top? Is it the person down below? Is it both? So to me, it strikes me as a vibey street scene. And what we have here is the cool tones being contrasted. The cool tones are what are pervasive in this scene, and they're being contrasted with the splashes of very stark red. And these red tones really liven the image up, as red can do so beautifully. We have a guy at the bottom walking through, and that guy is, I would love it if he was like just a little bit to the right, so that he's perfectly in the middle of that little piece of wall. That would be nice, but it's okay. We got a little bit of wabi-sabi here. The street is not a perfect place. That's okay. So in this case, we see how powerful the use of night can be in bringing out very specific, very stark colors that can really make a photo more exciting. It can help you achieve more images with a lot of visual contrast that is helped along by the darkness. Okay, that's it for this. That is it. That is it. That is all. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee. But that is all. So I would love to hear your thoughts, and I would be curious to know if you guys have come across some particularly colorful situations, some serendipitous events where you have some colors playing along with other colors, the subject wearing, like, what if someone got that same scene as at the beginning, but somebody was wearing a banana suit and they were riding a yellow bike? That would be phenomenal. So yeah, I would love to hear your stories. Please feel free to engage below. I love a good discussion. And if you enjoy what I'm up to here, if you hit the like and subscribe, I would really appreciate that. But I love you guys. I hope you have a fantastic day.